Hello and welcome to The Career Clinic. I'm Jo Thomas and today I'm sharing a conversation I absolutely loved. I'm joined by Gareth Roach, Chief People Officer at Target Group. His career started in learning and development and has taken him right into the C-suite. We talked about the moments that shaped that journey, how he leads with empathy, the highs and challenges of stepping up, and how he keeps high performance and well-being in balance. Gareth also shares some brilliant advice for anyone thinking about their next career move. I came away totally inspired, and I think you will too. So, let's get into my chat with Gareth Roach.
Thank you so much for coming in, Gareth. Honestly, I really, really appreciate it because I can imagine that you're extremely busy. So taking your time out to meet with me today and have this discussion on the Career Clinic, I really, really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So yeah, just kind of wanted to get straight into it really.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited to hear all about your career and your career path because I know that a lot of people are going to find it super useful. So you started out effectively in L&D. That's how you started your career. But how did you initially step into L&D?
Yeah. So firstly, I've always been somebody from school that hasn't been like naturally gifted, it's fair to say.
Right.
So let me just take it back a step. So I've always been somebody that has to work hard for anything I've achieved. It doesn't just come naturally. I used to always look at those people at school who just used to seem to be messing around but got really good results, a bit envious. So I've always had to work really hard. I went to university. It was just quite the norm thing to do, GCSEs, A-levels, go to university. And I finished university without really any clear idea of what I wanted to do, just simply that I enjoyed psychology, I enjoyed people interactions, and that was about as far as it went from a career path perspective. So decided to go and work at British Gas. So started at British Gas on the phone, speaking to customers, old Halmont House down in Cardiff. So did that for 6 months. It was okay. It did what it served its purpose. There's a bit of money, got a bit of experience, work. And I came to the end of my probation period. So I had a great manager at the time, a guy called Richard, who he asked me, congratulations, you passed your probation. What do you want to do next? And I was in this space, I think, I'd been to university, so I was really cool. So I was like, well, I'm going to try and find myself, a really good job. And he was like, yeah, okay. And he was kind of a little bit wise to it and said, well, whilst you're here, you might as well get the most out of your period here. So what would you like to do? And I thought, oh, that makes sense. So I said, I like people. I like interacting and helping, supporting people. And he suggested training. If you thought about training, I thought, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll give that a go. And I quite enjoyed my New Start training and thought I'd give that a go. So he was really influential to me right at the beginning because what he did from that conversation is I came into work the following day, ready to log on 15 minutes early as always. And he said, actually, don't log on today, Gareth, you're floor walking for our new starters. So I was really fortunate that that's kind of my entry into the world of L&D. I got an opportunity to support new starters, floor walking, give them a bit of coaching, a bit of feedback, things that I knew, tips, nothing more complicated than that. Really enjoyed it, loved it. Didn't go back to the phones from there. So I just carried on doing that for a period of time. Then some opportunities started to arise. So restructures happening. There were some opportunities that came up. And one of the opportunities was for a learning and development trainer. And it was a role up in Manchester. So I was still in my early 20s, still enjoying life. Manchester sounded fun. I hadn't long been there for a weekend. I thought, I'll apply for that and see how that goes. And accidentally got the role. So, which was fantastic for me. It's a great experience. Lived up in Manchester for a year in an L&D trainer role, and then actually got a placement back down in Cardiff. So after a year, and then really in learning development, spent about 12, 13 years at British Gas, moving my way through different roles. So I always remember one pivotal moment when I'd just come back to Cardiff. There was a restructure happening, and I was unfortunately in one of those at-risk roles, and it gave me a bit of. And I got through it, it was fine, but it gave me a bit of drive to say, I've always had this thing in my head, not that I'll always be the best, because I've always had to work really hard for everything, but I've always been the top two. So any team I'm in, I always want to be in the top 2 performers. And it's because I never want to be in that place again on that position. So it's almost, my way of protecting myself, I suppose. And work through different roles and progress from there.
And how instrumental was Richard in all of that? If you hadn't had him as a manager, if he wasn't a leader, you might not be in the position that you're in now.
Yeah. 100%. So like hence why I can remember vividly, even where we were sat in the office, I can remember the whole thing.
Wow.
If you hadn't had that conversation with me, I don't know where my career would have gone. It's fair to say. So I didn't know. I didn't have a clear path. It wasn't like my sister, for example, who's always been really clear on where she wants to go. I've always been a bit more what I enjoy, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get there. So that conversation that he had with me, I think it taught me something about leadership, just that ability to actually listen and not be an autopilot, and actually spending the time hearing somebody, you can help them far more effectively.
And he must have seen something in you and recognised something in you.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. He'd have to answer that himself. Maybe he's trying to get rid of me. I don't know. But no, I think so. Yeah. So he was very good at his coaching, feedback. From a team leader perspective, it's something I think a lot about in my current role as well.
Yeah, fab. And from L&D, you then moved into, I guess, more of a generalist role. So how do you step from L&D into more general HR? Because usually, or most of the time, I would say, it is the other way around.
Yeah, agree. So this was it's an interesting point, because I think by the time I got to the end of my time at British Gas, and it was the right time for me to leave, and I loved my time at British Gas. And when I look back at it, you don't appreciate the growth that you had in those roles that you're actually getting. It just seemed the norm because it was all I had known from came out of university, first proper job, if you want. So when I came to leave British Gas, it was like a burning question. It's not meant in an arrogant way. It's just something in my mind. How good can I be? And it still was something I just didn't know the answer to. And I felt like I'll never know the answer until I leave British Gas and I experience something else, as scary as that was. So I went and did a few contracting roles. So worked at Cardiff Metropolitan University for a period of time, wanted to work in a totally different sector. And it was a good experience. I learned a lot about what I maybe didn't want to do as much as what I wanted to do, which was helpful for me. I went and worked at a manufacturing company over in Bristol called AGAS. That was more of a talent development role. So again, very, very different environment. But what I learned really from that role was I just really love working with people. I don't want to be stuck by the desk. I get my energy from being around people, I suppose. So those couple of things started to happen. I then got a job at Target. So at Target, I became a learning development manager, which is an amazing opportunity. They had a training function I would describe previously, and they wanted to move more of a journey towards more of a learning culture. So it was a great, really, really good time for me to go. I worked with some colleagues that I'd worked with previously, so it was, stars aligned in that space. But I always, at that point, I'd also come to the realization, I was reflecting back a bit on my career and thinking, if I had my time again, I'd have gone and done generalist HR. So become really established in that space.
Right.
And then I'd have maybe specialised in L&D at a later date. But that wasn't my mindset back when I was 21, 22. That wasn't where my head was. So when I did the learning development role at Target for about 2 years, and an opportunity came up, I kind of got to a stage where when I know I can do something, I kind of get a bit bored. And so it was a piece where that was starting to happen for me. I was comfortable with what I was doing. I knew the answers. I knew what to do when challenges came up, all those sort of things. So I started to think, what's next to me? One of my colleagues in the HR team was going on maternity leave. So I knew there was an opportunity that was going to come up. So after Christmas, I went in and said, look, I'd love to give it a go. So went in on a seconded basis. I went in as a HR business partner. So felt like a lot of my transferable skills were relevant. So very similar in many ways to what I was doing at L&D, although scary because it was something different and a lot to learn at the same time. And I was surrounded by an awesome team that allowed me to learn. So that was so important. It enabled me to ask the stupid questions. which I still do every meeting. So, but they were there like to support me. I learned loads, and they were a super experienced team in many ways, and like so I learned loads. And then within my generalist role, where it just enabled me again to progress. So learn all the real solid skills I got from learning and development manager role. So that was a lot to do with things like the coaching, the listening to people, the problem solving without necessarily being the problem solver, is what I would say. And then that more strategic thinking, to where it's been very much focused on L&D structure, the learning and development space, moving across the HR role, generalist role. It was just a different strategy, but it's just now still talking about people, but it's just slightly different. Now we're talking about engagement. Now we're talking about well-being. Now we're talking about diversity, inclusion. So different topics, but then just that strategic thinking.
Amazing. And did you always see yourself moving into senior leadership, or do you think that ambition came later?
Definitely later. I always looked up to people in these sort of senior leadership roles. So I used to always think a bit like, I'd see them and I'd think, oh, that's amazing that they're doing that. And they'd always be so confident and like so full of like, polished in my mind, my perception of what was happening. And I thought, God, it's amazing they can do that. I can never do that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've recognized is I got such a strong like grounding in L&D, because you get so used to standing up and delivering to large groups that you take it for granted. And I was never the most vocal person in meetings, but I could always stand up in a group and facilitate a conversation. So that's been a real transferable skill that I've then noticed others like on their own like development journeys, if you like, sometimes need to develop. So I'm quite grateful for that now. I never really saw myself, and I still don't really, I chuckle at my job title. I don't see myself as any different to anybody else that I work with. It genuinely is. For me, it's just a title. I'm lucky I lead. My job is to lead awesome people in my mind. So I have a team of awesome experts around me who are far more capable than me. And I'm just there to ultimately create the environment, if you want, call it culture if you want, but the right space for people to flourish. Yeah. I don't need to have all the answers, because I've got an awesome team who have all the answers. So, but I've just got to enable them to be able to perform at their best.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like they're really lucky to have you, actually, Gareth. So,
right. I only say that in the best companies.
And what do you think? Well, what's been a moment in your career that I guess, has really shifted things for you, where maybe you've had to grow or rethink your approach?
Yeah. So I could give a few, but I'll give. Okay. Let me start with the main one that I reflect back on, outside of Richard, that I mentioned. So when I was working in British Gas, so I mentioned that I progressed, and I found myself in a national role, which was great, lots of travel around the UK, which was cool, exciting. I'd stay in different hotels, all that element. So I had a line manager at the time. She had a really strong L&D background, and she was, for me, a very challenging character.
Right.
So she was very to the point. She was very to the point, very no small talk. Not about necessarily, she was about the people, but not about the person in that moment, because it was about getting her job done. And she was particularly strategic thinking, is what I would describe. And I found that relationship working in really challenging. Yeah. So I am more of that earth green type character. So we were really like polar opposites. So a couple of things happened that really shifted my thinking. So the first thing was we'd had this interesting relationship for a period. I think I really frustrated her, and I don't think I did. And she really frustrated me, so for sure. And almost to the point where, you on a Sunday night, I'd be thinking about the meeting I've got with her on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, because I'd be internally worrying about something. We went on an insights discovery accreditation course together, and I remember we sat down, and it was a 4-day intensive course. We sat down together, and she sat right next to me, and I was thinking, oh God, this is going to be a long 4 days. But throughout those 4 days, it was really quickly, I started to recognize that my personality type were all the things that me on a bad day would drive her wild. But likewise, the same thing was happening vice versa.
Right.
So we were both polar opposite personality type, but ultimately trying to get to the same goal, right?
Yeah.
So, and it became really obvious. We were nudging each other then throughout. So, oh my God, I do that to you. And oh, I do that to you. And so an example, she'd call me on a Monday morning, ask me where we are with these things first thing. And I'd be saying, well, thinking to myself, well, thanks for asking how my weekend was. And we had all that conversation. So one of the things that's quite pivotal for me is just that recognition in working relationships that it's not always plain sailing, that we all experience, but it's just personality differences 9 times out of 10, and adapting your approach can really work. We really ended up adapting our approaches. So she would call me on a Monday morning and ask me about all these things that I needed to do that week and where we were up to, and she'd call me back 30 seconds later, apologising for not asking how my weekend was.
Wow.
I would stop leaving her waffly voice messages and start giving her 3 bullet points in a bet to say, if you need more detail, give me a ring.
Wow.
And we totally adapted. And when I left that role,
it won't come through that it doesn't go.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when I finished that role, I recognised that what she'd been doing to me is something really. So, and I think it's like anybody going into any new role, imposter syndrome forms a big part. It's a big part of who I am for sure, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. Like, so that's who I am. Thinking, am I good enough? Am I doing the right things? What else should I do? I'm probably my own worst critic in many ways. I see that as a development area for me, and I think will always be. But I also see it as underlying sort of strength, I suppose, as well. So I try and think of it actually more as my friend rather than my foe.
Right.
So it's the sense check-in of am I doing the right thing and reflect on my own performance. So I think stepping into an exec role can be intimidating.
Yeah.
I've been lucky. I've got an amazing leader as CEO. We came into the role a few months before me. We have a fantastic relationship, but what's really important in that relationship is it's really trusted, really honest with each other as well. So it's not all nicey nice,
Okay, yeah.
but also somebody that's really committed to creating a really great culture where we are. So I think in that exec role, a few things really stand out from a leadership perspective. So I've always been really honest. So and sometimes I questioned, is that a strength, or sometimes should you hold stuff back a bit? And I decided quite early on that I was going to be the CPO I'm just going to do it my way. Yeah, so I'm not going to try and copy other people. I'm not going to look at the greatness of others or the bits I think should be done. I'm just going to go, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to approach it. So the honesty is I've maintained and being really transparent. So that's something I really believe in for all of our colleagues, is that we're super, super transparent about what's happening. The approachability. So I'm not a big fan of the hierarchy stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work for me. So I want people to be able to talk and communicate with me and give me their ideas, because as I said earlier, often they're probably better than the ideas I've got, right? So that's been a really, important leadership trait, which sound really obvious, but I think comes out more in an exec role. I also think in an exec role, from a people perspective, it's the thing I've really learned as we've gone through, which has sometimes been easier than others, is that you really wear 2 hats at an exec level. So you're ultimately wearing the business hat. Yeah. So the business strategy, the business plan hat. And then you're also wearing the hat of colleague and people. Now, yes, they should always be intertwined, but there will always be friction moments, a bit like your atomic plate.
Right.
Yeah, there'll always be that, right? So in an organization. So it's about how do you manage those in the right way. And as an exec member, I'm there primarily to deliver the business goals, first and foremost, but I'm there to do it by absolutely keeping the exec team and board honest on the people strategy and the culture that we're creating. So it's that's been an experience. Do you know what I mean? Where there's been moments where my imposter syndrome has been rattling away, thinking about, are we doing the right things? How else could we do it? What would minimize impacts, or what would be better from a colleague perspective? That very much happens at constant.
Yeah.
But that's definitely been one of those lessons. And just to go into it with your eyes wide open, that you absolutely have both hats to wear.
Yeah. And actually, wearing those 2 hats can be quite difficult. You work in a high performance environment, Gareth. I can imagine that there are times when it is super, super stressful. How do you personally manage that? pressure?
So, good question indeed. I was going to say gin and tonic. So look, yeah, so you're right. There are times when the pressure can be there. So I think there's a couple of things. So firstly, do you believe in the plan? So if you believe in the plan and the strategies that you've got, then things become easier because it gives you the why. So, and that's really important to me. So why are we doing the things that we're doing? As long as I've got my why, I've got the strategy, I know the direction to travel, things aren't always going to be easy. That's life, right? So that's a super important piece for me. On a personal level, a couple of things, I suppose. How do I manage it? So firstly, I have an awesome team.
Yeah.
Mentioned it already.
Yeah.
They genuinely are awesome. And part of it's about how do I share that pressure, but in the right way with the team. So delegation is really important. But also, it's okay for me as a leader to turn around to my team and say, I don't know, the answer is here. I'm stuck. Help. Yeah. So, and that's like a really important for me in my team culture as well as the company's culture. But from a team perspective, I'm really comfortable saying to my team, I don't know the answer. Yeah. Or I've got this really tight deadline. I don't know how I'm going to achieve it. Yeah. So the same as I would expect from them back to me so that I can support. So I think sharing that pressure is important because we're a team and we're in it together. Yeah, I'm accountable, but that's the nature of the role. So the sharing is important. They fabulous at supporting me in those moments. They always usually have the answers. I'm usually sat looking at something that I'm getting worried about or stressed about, and there's no need because they can have the brains of the set because they're the experts, right? So also from a personal point of view, a few little things super important to me, which, we all get right. I don't think there's a right and wrong here, but I think there's times when you get it really right and times you get it really wrong. I do have some pretty strong boundaries in place, so I do my absolute best not to work at weekends.
Right.
I really try not to work late into the evenings, but if I do have to work into the evening, I have time slot 7 till 9, which works for me rather than later. And again, everybody's different. But like if I am going to work outside of my hours, it's not the norm, it's the exception. And I've been quite strict. Likewise, some really small things, just about giving yourself breathing space.
Yeah.
In an exec role, you can spend 40 hours a week on calls.
Right.
So easily 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
If you allow that to happen. And so I've had a PA who was fantastic for a period, looking after a number of the exec team, and really challenged me around, do you need to attend that? If that should that be a member of your team? Well, when are you going to do that piece of work you've got to do for Monday morning? And so I've really decided to adopt little techniques, focus times, meeting lengths are 50 minutes, not an hour, those type of things. But the thing that really sits beneath all of that stuff, I suppose, is a real clear view on why am I doing what I'm doing and what is my motivation. And my motivation is, yes, from a role satisfaction perspective, but then from a Gareth outside of work perspective, it's so that I can support Paul and make sure that we have the space, time, and ability to do the things that we want to do to have a fulfilling life. So Lola, my lovely little cat, has all the climbing frames that she ever needs.
Amazing.
And that Gareth's there to spend time playing and being silly with her, right? So, and then seeing family and all that sort of stuff. So that why I'm really clear on. That's why I do what I do, as well as all the personal driving benefits I get that I've already mentioned.
Yeah, fair. And how do you support your team as well, without burning out?
Yeah. So, and it's funny, especially like when I think about the people team and especially the HR team in particular and the talent acquisition team, like there can be roles that come through in peaks and troughs. So, sometimes it's busier than others. My view is you treat everybody as an individual first and foremost. Flexibility is key. So, and it comes from previous managers I've had where that level of flexibility is there. You super appreciate it. So, I think firstly, it's around that level of flexibility, whether it be working hours, whether it be childcare, whether it be things going on in people's life. It's caring and giving people that space. Yeah. That's super important. But you can't overestimate the importance of this. It's so obvious, right? Your regular check-ins, your one-to-ones, your But again, it's about listening, not telling. So that's not something for me that works, because if you listen and people feel comfortable sharing, you'll know early when those things are happening, and then you can put things in place. I often describe this role as almost being a problem solver role, because 90% of the time, team will be functioning perfectly, don't need to get involved. The 10% of the time you need to get involved, it's typically to solve something. And that could be about somebody being under pressure, it could be about some new piece of work that's coming, it could be something that's just difficult that we need to work through. So a lot of the role that catches you, I suppose, is that problem solving piece. But the team piece is key. Team nights out, whether we go and do some work we do volunteering, so we do that typically twice a year at least. So elements like that, or doing something for charity, the team get a huge buzz for different things. Like some parts of the job can be quite transactional at times, but other parts can be more transformational. So we do our My Awards, which we had last month. They
look amazing, by the way.
It was awesome, right? So you get 300 odd nominations from across the whole business come through, and come together with colleagues and just have a night of celebrations together, 10 awards. It's a great night, but the team love doing that. They get their energy from doing that. So it's about managing those things between, sometimes it's a bit more the transactional, challenging stuff, but that more transformational stuff.
And talking about the award, it is all that reward and recognition stuff as well, which is really important, I think, for other people to continue like you do, to remember the why and the purpose. And I think all of that helps, to prevent burnout. And
the recognition is absolutely key. So, and it's not like, recognition isn't about big successes. It can be, but it doesn't have to be about big successes. It can be a well done for somebody who's been nervous about presenting on an all company call with 600 colleagues. It can be a well done for speaking up in a meeting, which maybe they wouldn't have historically spoken up about, or could have been about asking a question. So one of the things that I took with me from Richard back at British Gas was something that always used to mean a lot to me. At the end of the week, he used to always say to me, thanks for this week. And I always remember him used to say it to me. I was thinking, I've just come in and done my job and sat on the phones. Like, that's a weird thing to say to me. But it used to always make me feel really good. And I genuinely mean it when I say, thanks for this week. Like, that's, it might feel a really token gesture, but it's not. Genuine thanking them for the week.
I love that.
So that recognition bit can be big in a big award, so it can be small day to day. We have a My Recognition platform where you can give like formal recognition to anybody across the business at any time. And we have monetary amounts with that as well. And like, that's something, again, that all of our leaders utilize regularly. I definitely do to my own team editors.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I think that, hearing the culture coming through, which is obviously driven by you and your team, it's all about being approachable and being human, really, and having that honesty and that integrity. And I love the fact that you clearly value all of your employees, whether they're at the top of their game for 1 month, it goes across the board, which is amazing. What do you think, Gareth, kind of going into a little bit of a different area now, what do you think is a myth or misconception about HR or people leadership that you think really needs to be challenged?
Yeah, okay. So the HR one I find really interesting. So there's a couple that I can give in the HR space. So the misconception that HR are there as a transactional function.
Right.
So they do the hiring and firing would be the traditional quote, right?
Yes.
So my view on that is, the reason I think it's very sure, it can be true, but it shouldn't be a myth. Because if you've got a HR team that is part of the strategic thinking of the business, and a HR team that is strategically thinking themselves, they empower and open the door to you actually being able to deliver the strategy. Where's that coming from for me? Well, ultimately, you can have a lovely piece of strategy written on a piece of paper, but if you haven't got the people there driving the delivery of that strategy, then it won't get delivered, right? So they are your number one asset, if you want to think of it like that, in a quite blunt way. So you need to look after them well. There's very few decisions across a business that you will make that doesn't impact people at some point in that conversation. So having the HR people or person sat at the table, be part of those discussions, decisions, and influencing the way forward enables, in my mind, far greater chance of success. So I think that sort of transactional piece still very much exists. It's changing, and it's changing, I think, in your more successful organizations. So I think that's super important. So it might sound like a slight contradiction here, though.
Right.
Is the other piece around culture. So who owns the culture of an organization?
Okay, yeah.
So that isn't the HR team. Yeah. So like the culture is owned by every single person in that organization. But what actually influences that culture is the leaders that you have.
Yeah.
And that's leaders at all levels across the organization. So you could have an exec team that are really aligned on a type of culture, and it might be that we bring in certain systems like a my recognition tool, but it's actually about the behaviors of your leaders and how do you influence those and how do you ensure you skill them correctly from a learning perspective, how do you embed that really well in the organization. But it's not owned by the HR team. It's simply the HR team have a role to play in that culture, have a role in upkeeping the culture that you want to create.
Yeah.
But they're not the owners of it. You know, you can't rock up to HR and say, our culture's rubbish, what are you going to do to fix it? It ain't going to work, right? So I think that's a key element for me. Culture's how do you embed all of those day-to-day interactions into everything that you do. And what does it look and feel like to be around here? And that's created ultimately by your leaders. And I think back to the culture of some of the people I mentioned in the teams and that little climate culture, if you want, that they created of your Richards and within other roles, which has been part of the greater culture.
Amazing. You're obviously super driven, Gareth. You know, even when we were first talking about when you were in school, you know, you worked really, really hard.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Were you born with that, or?
Was it? No, I don't think so. I'm trying to think what my mum and dad would say, or my sister right now. No, I definitely wasn't born with it. So it's interesting because I don't perceive myself to be particularly driven. So that's worth mentioning. I don't think I'm one of these people that's like, I want to be this, I want to be that. I've never been that. My career has always been zigzagging, finding my way, opportunities have come up. So I've always been like a big believer in, like I said, I get a bit bored, I want to do something else. So I'm always seeking those opportunities. So that's what that is. I don't know. I think it's that piece about I just get a bit bored once I know I can do things.
Yeah.
I've become driven by family. That's been an important part for me. My dad died about 9 years ago, and that left me very reflective around a few things. So I think just literally living for every day became important. So that piece has stayed with me, wanting to make my mum, my sister, and my dad proud of what I've achieved, and Paul being part of that as well. So I do, I get a buzz, you know, as I said, from growing, although it's taken me time to recognize that's actually what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think that imposter syndrome plays a part into it, because, you know, as I said, I'll sit there and think I can't do this. Have I done the right things? What else could I have done differently? Oh, Gareth, did you really say that in that podcast? You know, I do all that sort of stuff. I do that a lot, and that's where I mentioned earlier. I think that's part of my, as much as it can be a development for me, it's also a strength of mine that I do that reflecting, and I am a natural reflector, and I do think things through a lot. So like that is an important strength of makes me who I am, I suppose. But driven, I don't know, like I just
I get it. I'm a reflector as well, and I will reflect on conversations that I had, you know, 48 hours prior, and be like, oh God, why didn't I say that? You know, I'm not a quick thinker, I'm a very deep thinker, and I think it takes me a while to form my
exactly.
I totally get that. And the other thing I get as well is, when you mentioned your dad passing away, when my mum passed away, I think obviously it's just the worst thing in the world, isn't it?
Yes.
But I think it almost leaves you feeling quite fearless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just think, do you know what? Who cares?
Yep.
Life is short.
Yep, exactly that.
So that almost pushes you
Exactly
a bit out of your comfort zone as well, doesn't it? Because you think, like, oh, what's the worst that can happen?
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Totally relate.
Funny. And on the days when your energy's low,
Yeah.
or things do feel quite difficult, quite heavy, we all get that. And actually, you probably have answered this already, but, what does keep you going?
Yeah. So this will be quite a controversial answer.
Okay.
I kind of stop and I give myself space, right?
Fine.
So if ever I'm having those days where my energy level's a little bit low, I kind of just go, that's okay. Yeah, so it's okay. Like, nobody's 100% all the time. Nobody. Like, there's no athlete in the world who's been 100% on every day of their performance. They haven't been. It's the same with everybody else. So you'll have good days, you'll have some not so good days, you'll have some in between days, and that's okay. And I think that acceptance of that's okay. That's how I try and lead my team as well. Is like, we're not always going to be 100%. So I try and give myself a break. Is the honest answer. Just cut myself a bit of slack. Because 9 times out of 10, it's stuff that I'm creating anyway. So that's important. The other thing for me is basic lesson that my mum taught me, which is, Gareth, make a list. And it works, right? So I sit down and I go, right, what's going on in my head, and I'll sit there with a blank piece of paper and go, I'll scribble, and all of a sudden I've got everything out. And again, usually I've got to do that for that one, that for that one, that for that one, that for that. That isn't even important, so don't worry about that one. And then I'll just get on with working through that list. And quite quickly, I find by doing 1 or 2 things on the list, I feel it's lift the burden, if you want. And I try and do, and I say try on purpose, because whether I'm successful at this or not, but try and do the eat your frog. So I try and do that thing in the morning that I least want to do that day, because if I do that, then it's done. And again, usually I feel better and it gives me energy for the rest of the day. So as I said, I'm not saying I always manage to achieve that, but that's what I try and do, right? So.
And how true is that with the list thing? Because that is literally you physically having space from your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because your thoughts are on that piece of paper and you're sort of physically aware. Your thoughts are out of your head and they're on that paper, aren't they? I love that. I'm going to start doing that more often, to be honest with you, Gareth.
Yeah, mine ends up looking like all sorts of scribbles. Sometimes I end up doing it on my phone notes over the weekend if things are bothering me. Yeah. Just to get out, of my head. So that tends to be when I'm feeling a bit low. Yeah. I do think about the why. So what am I doing this for? And that's important. And not as in, what am I doing this for? As in, why am I here? Yeah, so that's important to me. And then, but sometimes I think it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay not to be 100%, right? So,
and to just recognise that and recognise that everybody goes through that.
Yep.
Yeah, fab. What do you think has been your most proudest moment, or one of your most proudest moments, would you say, so far in your career, Gareth?
Wow. So I find this question really hard.
Okay, sorry.
So no, it's okay. Wow. So it's really hard one. So I'm really proud of the team that I work with, first of all. We've been on a journey and they're flourishing right now, and I love to see it, both in terms of team but individually. I absolutely love that. A really good example, I'm super proud of Emma, who leads our L&D team. Yeah. She stepped into the role this year and is flourishing, and she's doing so much amazing work. She's not just leading our learning and development strategy, but she's learning our diversity and inclusion strategy, so on an individual level. I collectively have an awesome team. So I'm super proud of them, right? So, and I know that's not really answering the question because you asked about me.
But I can just hear it, and that's lovely to hear. Because, when you talk about them, I can see, and people listening won't be able to see, but I can see your eyes lighting up. I can see how important that is to you.
They're an awesome group. And I could list them all. So if they listen to this, I could have listed you all. So I love that personal growth that has taken place, the way the team's formed, how they're individually flourishing. I couldn't be prouder of that. I'm proud of the exec team that I'm part of. Yeah. So pretty much newly formed over the 2 years. and we're delivering against our strategy and our plan, making a real difference to the future of Target. So I'm really, really proud of us as an exec team, because it hasn't, there's like any business, there's been the highlights and there's been, some challenging times. So I'm super proud of that team and the work that we've done. On a personal level, there's probably, look, the one I'm probably I was most proud and most shocked about was actually getting this role in the first place. Yeah. So I feel genuinely lucky to be doing the role that I do. Like all roles, have good days, have challenging days, right? Yeah. So I feel really lucky to do it. I felt super proud when I got the role. Yeah. So I think getting to this stage in my career, I'm excited about the future. Mm-hmm. Always the risk with me. Of course, I get a bit bored and I want to do like, you know what I mean? I want to do things that are like testy. So, but that's very much the case in the role where I am now, is that I get that pretty much on a daily basis. So so I'm super proud to be in the role that I'm in. I'm super proud to lead the team that I lead and be a part of the exec team that's taking Target forward.
Amazing. And kind of on the flip side then, Gareth, what would you say has been the most challenging moment to date for you within your career?
Yeah, so let's rewind back to British Gas days.
Right, yeah.
So I think
I remember them.
Yeah. So I think it would be when I was at British Gas and I came back from Manchester, so I was in that learning development role, and there was a restructure that took place. I think it was within probably about 3 or 4 months. It was quite quickly after I got back.
Right.
And I found out that I was at risk of redundancy in that process. I think that was probably one of the low places in my career, which in hindsight is quite a funny thing to reflect on. But like, I think it made such a fundamental impact on me. I felt like, although I was probably 26, something like that then, like there's so much I could go and do afterwards, but at the time it felt like the end of the world.
It's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I remembered going through that process and eventually being saved. I think I touched on it earlier on when I said I just decided I was always going to be the top 2 in my team. And that's one of the things that gave me that drive, is that fear, I suppose. So I don't want to ever be in that position again. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the more challenging times. But then likewise with the manager, who I found challenging to start with at British Gas, like there were days and I thought, this isn't for me, do you know what I mean, anymore. So I think there's quite a bit of learning there around, I suppose just it's a bit of perceptions, and you take off those shutters on those glasses and what's actually what's really happening here, versus what's your perception of the world, and then how that can impact your thinking.
With that perception as well, I remember doing a podcast not that long ago. We were talking about feedback and how important it is for leaders to ask for feedback on their management side as well, and how that's so similar to that situation that you're in with that course. It's that feedback loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
it's almost the situation there where there wasn't that feedback loop properly in place, which is as much about me as anything else. So yeah, absolutely. That feedback loop's really important. And also that contracting about how are we going to work together? Like, how do you like to work? How do I like to work? That's okay to ask those things. But I was probably too immature at that stage to ask those questions, right? So, or confident. Just another confidence.
Yeah. There you go. Growth and experience. Yeah. And so for anyone listening who wants to build a really long-term career in HR, what do you think are qualities or traits that really make somebody stand out in this space?
Yeah. So I could give the textbook answer, couldn't I, right? So, but the key thing for me is that you're yourself.
Right, yeah.
And that you're genuine. So just be yourself, be, whoever you are, bring the things that you're good at and the things that you need to develop in, and that's all okay, right? So, but I think being yourself, the reason I say that is that to work in HR, you have to be trusted to, your colleague, the colleagues of the organization. And you'll only develop that level of trust and credibility, I suppose, if people have that in you, I suppose. So the only way for me you can truly develop that is by bringing your full self to work, being yourself.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, that's all okay, right? So I think that enables you to build those close working relationships. So often in HR, in the different roles I've done, you find yourself in this like counselor role. And that can be from work or outside of work.
Yeah.
But you having that, spending the time listening to colleagues can be so impactful. And often, you can leave those stakeholder meetings, interactions, conversations, getting a coffee, whatever it might be. And this person will say, oh, thank you so much for that. And you stand there and you generally be puzzled because you'll be thinking, I haven't really said anything. Yeah, but you've spent the time listening, and work can be so busy and life can be so busy that sometimes giving the people the ability to be heard is the most precious thing you can do. So I think being your true self enables that stuff.
Yeah.
And then if I went to a bit more the role, if you want, is ultimately, like, for me, is always ask yourself, what is the business plan and what is the business strategy? That always should be your starting point with that hat. And then you go, so what does that mean from a colleague or people's perspective? And your people strategy will be a part of that anyway, but then that'll support your interactions with sometimes helping your stakeholders focus on the key and the important things that drive the business forward, that create a great colleague experience as well. So I think it's that balance between that wider strategic thinking and then bringing that into what does that mean from a people agenda.
Amazing. And it's great hearing you say about having people need to have that honesty, and I guess just admit if you don't know something.
Yeah.
Or, if you're oops. I messed up.
Yeah.
And just having that, what is it, humility?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, right, so from a leadership quality perspective, it's so important. Like, so it's almost frowned upon to say this, right? So to allow your people to fail, it's okay to fail. Yeah. So it's not bad failing. Like, failing is just something you've learned from. I always think, like, the failure piece is all around intent. So if you failed for the right reasons, you made a mistake because you tried to do the right thing. Okay, it's a learning thing, right? You're not going to get better unless you make mistakes, get things wrong, don't prepare for something properly, or haven't researched or whatever, but just do it for the right reasons. The intent's the important piece. And as a leader, like, part of the trick, isn't it, links to the problem solving bit I mentioned earlier on, is to catch it before it gets to that space. Right? So you try and catch it before you get to that space, but it's throughout that process, it's around coaching, feedback, development, to enable people to realize that they can do the things that they think they might not be able to do. Because then they get the personal growth. It comes next time. It's easier, and then you move on to the next thing.
Amazing. What do you think has come as a surprise to you about HR that other people might not be aware of? Is there anything that springs to mind?
I think, well, I was firstly very surprised at the similarity between L&D and the HR. So it's about transferable skills, I suppose. That surprised me.
Yeah.
I looked, again, having come from that formalized HR background, knew more about HR than I probably gave myself credit for. Of working in a people function.
Yeah.
But, I didn't have that, like, technical HR background per se, if you want to think of it like that. So I relied heavily on those transferable skills. So the coaching, all that sort of stuff, maybe with all that strategic thinking, and all the other things that you just take for granted, like your organization, your planning, your prioritizing, your project planning, like the sort of things you go, of course, no transferable skills, but they are, like, so. So I think that was been one of the first things. Is like the transferable skills were far more important transferring across from L&D than the technical knowledge.
Right.
I had an inferiority complex about the technical knowledge, but I was able to learn it really quickly. And the answers are always out there, right? So you just need to go and research them until you've learned it once, and then hopefully you remember it, right? So I think that was one of my personal biggest surprises. As I said earlier on, I think one of the other perceptions of a HR function can sometimes be they're the people to do the transactional stuff, whether it be recruitment, whether it be supporting, like going through a performance management situation, which is difficult. They can also sometimes be labeled as the fun team. Do you know what I mean? So I always giggle because I say I used to work in learning and development, which was the colouring in team, and now I've progressed into the fun team.
Yeah.
And again, so neither of those are true, right? So as I mentioned, they're not the owners of the culture. Yeah, they're the facilitators to enable it to happen at times. But yeah, they're not just there to do that transactional nitty gritty. And actually, if they are, I would argue that you haven't got the right processes in place,
Right.
or you haven't got skilled leaders in position, or your leaders just aren't doing it, right? So I've seen that, I suppose, through that period of times.
Amazing. You sound to me, Gareth, right, like a super empathetic leader. You're nodding. You do. You do. And there is a lot of talk now around empathetic leadership. In real life, okay, when the pressure's on, okay, and there are deadlines, or you're going through something which within an organisation is critical and a really, really tricky, challenging situation, do you think it's still possible to lead with empathy?
100%.
Yeah.
And for me, it's more important in those scenarios.
Yeah.
So be yourself is the first thing.
Yeah.
So just I won't get away from that. Like, there's no point. You work too much to try and be something that you're not, right? So, so acknowledge your strengths and acknowledge the things that other people are better at is my way of thinking of it, and that's okay. So I think leading in that way for me is the norm.
Yeah.
But I would expect all leaders to do that. Leadership's moved away from a tell. Yeah, so it's far more of an ask or a listen for me than it's ever been. It's not about being the expert leader who knows all the answers and has all the answers, and that's why they're in the role that they're in. It's different to that. It's about setting out the goal, setting out the why, and sometimes that's not even coming up with that stuff yourself. That's sometimes getting others to help co-create that stuff with you.
Yeah.
It's about being really clear on people's roles, responsibilities, whether that be in a job or whether it be in a project or a piece of activity, to your question. And then it's about supporting through that process. It's about coaching through that process. It's about getting your hands dirty when you need to as a leader. So when you need to jump in and help, right? So that's fine. And it's then about recognizing both the achievements through that process, big and small. And it's also then about how do you, whether it's developmental stuff, that you support that development rather than curse it or criticize it. It's a development opportunity. So I absolutely believe it can exist. I think company-wide, where does it exist? Again, it's but through listening and hearing. So we've just set up a new colleague forum group called Talk Target. So this is where colleagues will come along, be able to share their views, things that are good, bad, ugly. We'll be able to share different things, initiatives that are coming up across the business, gain feedback and input. I think that's super important, that ability to be heard. I find when people aren't heard, they get frustrated.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do is hear and respond. So it might not be the answer people always want, because that's life. Yeah. But you can at least give people the courtesy of responding and treating them in a humane way. And let's be honest, like, work isn't always easy in the current climate, right? So, but you, as a bare minimum, can treat people like the way you'd want to be treated, right? So I absolutely believe it has a place.
Yeah, and what a difference that makes, because sometimes that's all it takes is just knowing that you've been heard.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't mean that there's change, it's just knowing that sometimes somebody just wants to vent. Yep. And once they've got it off their chest, then you feel better, don't you?
Yeah. Yep.
That's all it is.
100%. And even the flexibility piece I mentioned earlier on becomes really important. People have lives outside of work.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, my big observation, this is both from my own perspective, but I've seen it in others as well, is sometimes if one or the other is challenging, people's resilience drop. Yeah. So it might be that outside work's really tough right now. Resilience will drop, but they're doing okay in work. And then one thing can happen, or one big deadline, or one project, and it suddenly becomes too much because the resilience isn't where it needs to be. So I just think that level of honesty and checking in on your colleagues, your teammates, your teams, and truly listening and understanding can make the biggest difference. Real example, school holidays season right now, really difficult for parents.
Yeah.
So situation whereby that's really challenging, really struggling with childcare, trying to juggle everything at the same time.
Yeah.
Opportunity to do flexible working for 6 weeks. Yeah, whilst they get over the summer period, because they can't work on a Thursday, but they can actually do the additional hours in the other days without having that conversation, actually listening and hearing and seeing what was happening. You wouldn't be able to take that approach.
Yeah.
As it is, you've got somebody now who's feeling more comfortable. They're happy with what they need to do both from a work life and work perspective. Obviously, they're able to flourish. So I think it can be the smallest things. And I know everybody can't do that in certain roles, but where you can, you've got to have that level of empathy for inside and outside of work.
Absolutely. And I'm kind of drawing on your psychology degree here, Gareth.
Careful. Not sure I can remember any of it. So question maybe.
Going away.
Yeah. Wow.
But do you think that people are naturally empathetic leaders? Okay. Or, I'm sorry if I'm phrasing this incorrectly, or do you think it's something that has to be trained? Do you think people are, and do you think people are out there that can't be empathetic leaders, and no matter how much training they have, that's not possible? It's that human condition, isn't it?
So I think so I get it. So I think a lot about insights when I think of this.
Yeah.
So I think about the fact that we all have our own personality. Yeah, none of us are the same, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have natural things that we'll do at ease and some things that become more challenging and difficult for us to do.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. So I can have a conversation with somebody who's struggling with something, and I can do that all day. Yeah, and I'll get like a degree of energy from that. At the end of the day, I'll feel absolutely fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Very much my natural skill sets.
Right.
Ask me to go into an all-day meeting where I've got to challenge a load of strangers. All day. I'll go home and I'll be absolutely really tired. Yeah, so I'll be sleeping on the train home, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that I can't do it, it just takes me a bit more energy. So I think we all have it in our toolkit.
Yeah.
I think like for some people it will come more naturally too.
Yeah.
But for others, they'll do it in a different way. But like at the same time, it can be just as effective, I suppose.
Right.
So I think, yes, it can be learned. Yeah, of course it can. But I think there's an element of natural piece in there that we can all do as well.
Yeah.
A good example would be, and this is where the recognition piece of each other's differences becomes really important. My manager at Target, he used to call me up after the first call on Monday morning to ask me how my weekend. That meant more to me than anything in the world. Not because she'd forgotten. I didn't care about the fact that she'd forgotten. I cared about the fact she called me back and gone, I'm really sorry. This means something to you. So, like, I think it's just being nice and dare I say kind.
Yeah. Oh, and also self-aware.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't aware that that's how she was coming across.
How was she?
And when she knew, oh my goodness, she was probably really mortified.
Yeah, well, I was mortified about the things that was driving her mad behind me.
Yeah, so it's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess it's just always trying to remember to be self-aware and to do a bit of kind of self-reflection and thinking about how I'm impacting other people as you're going about your day. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Okay, fab. So something that I always ask people as well on the Career Clinic, and I wanted to ask you as well, in a parallel universe, right here. So we've got, in a totally different universe, we've got Gareth Roach.
Yeah.
Mark II.
Wow. That's great.
What would Gareth Roach Mark II be doing in that parallel universe?
Oh my God. So this is so hard. So I've toyed between three options. So
go on.
So I'm going to start off with me in my earlier teens then.
Yeah.
So I definitely would have been a Premier League footballer.
Amazing.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I can link with the lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? I could have lived with the money as well, to be fair.
Yeah. Could you play the football?
I was all right when I was younger, actually.
Good.
So, like,
so achievable.
Yeah, so I would have been, a Premier League footballer. I'd play for Liverpool would have been the dream. So that would have been number one. Then I moved on a bit and I thought, well, I could see myself being in a boy band.
I could see you in a boy band.
I was thinking, like, I could have been number 6 in 5. Do you know what I mean?
I can see
Yeah,
that.
do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I could have been in 5. I thought about Bros, but maybe that's going too far back. So let's go with 5. So yeah, I would have been that. But I think the most realistic of those options, potentially, unless you've heard me karaoke, would probably have been a sports psychologist. So and it was really interesting because where I was actually when I left school was there was 2 things that I enjoyed or I was any good at. One was I loved sport, and 2 was I enjoyed psychology. I was pretty decent at A level, which was my career development advice to myself when I went to university was therefore I should do sports psychology degree.
Right, yeah.
And I think because I never hadn't really thought that through as a way forward, it probably could have been if I had been a bit more focused at the time, but I'm grateful for what I've had now. But that piece is like, I can imagine myself, especially that's become a bigger part of the sporting world than it's ever been. So.
Right, it has. It really has, isn't it? But you carried that psychology through to what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So you can weave it, everything that you've done.
Yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah.
It's been super, super useful, hasn't it?
Yeah. And and that's the bit like sort of one of the career piece of advice that I would ever give people is, and people say it, but do something you enjoy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be something you're good at. It's something you enjoy. Because I think if you enjoy something, you can learn to be good at because you're enjoying it. If you're trying to be good at something you don't enjoy, it's always going to be a slog and you're never going to find true happiness in that space. So I think for me, that's probably...
And it's also really helpful for people listening, actually, because it's for people who want to step into HR that haven't done a degree in HR, that haven't kind of done that traditional route into it.
Yeah.
So, you can move into HR without it.
Yeah. So I think like career development is about, for me, it's about like finding experiences, gaining experiences. Experiences aren't big things. They don't have to be big placement. They can be, I'm going to attend and shadow my first performance review.
Yeah.
I'm going to deliver my first performance review.
Right.
Yeah. Then I'm going to deliver my first performance outcome, or observe my first outcome, and then deliver my first outcome. And then before long, you keep getting these. And again, you might be fearful of doing it or nervous about having those experiences. But once you've done it once, so then you've got the experience, and then you probably feel a bit more confident doing it the second time. And then by the time you're on your 5th or 6th, you don't have any nerves because you've done it 5 or 6 times already. And then you're on to the next thing. So it doesn't always have to be, up a ladder. Sometimes it's sideways, and sometimes it's just little experiences in your role. I got that benefit from British Gas, thanks to Richard, who gave me that opportunity in my role just to go and do something a little bit different that morning. So I was super fortunate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Gareth. Honestly, I found it so insightful and just super, super helpful. But it's just been really, really interesting. Everything that you said, and I know that people listening will probably feel exactly the same. I really appreciate it. And also, I'm pretty sure that 5 have reunited.
They have indeed. Amazing. Thank you very much. Really appreciate coming on.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And that's it for this episode of The Career Clinic. I really, really enjoyed talking with Gareth, and I hope it gave you lots of useful tools and inspiration to take away. If you'd like to share a thought or carry on the conversation, you can always find me on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to hear more episodes, just tap follow so the next one's easy to find. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.